Hi again. My name is Ajisha Alwin, and I am the Marketing and Outreach Coordinator, Director of the ESA Student Section. And I welcome you all to this webinar on how to create and maintain a professional academic blog. I hope you are having a great day, and I'm really looking forward to this presentation by Christine Valentine, who is a professional academic blogger, and she's going to be talking today about how to create, maintain an academic blog, and then how to share content from your blog to your group of people. So let's go ahead and get started. And Christine, I'll let you take it over.
Okay, well, thank you. And thank you so much to everyone who came today. I am so excited to talk about this topic. I was just telling Ajisha, I think I could probably talk about this, forever. So I'm just so happy to have you here. And I hope you can, take something useful away from the workshop today. So let's get started. So I was going to just briefly tell you who I am. So my name is Christine Valentine. You can find me at Twitter at @VAcademiaCo. So I'm a researcher and an academic blogger. My background is, my educational background is, I'm a recent graduate of the University of Alberta Masters in Educational Policy Studies program with a major in Educational Administration and Leadership. And I also completed, because of my interest in blogging, my certificate in web writing and social media communication through the University of Toronto. So that's my educational background. My blogging interest started more than 10 years ago during my undergraduate degree, when at the University of Alberta, I felt just as a new student, kind of lost. I didn't really have an outlet of any kind. So it was right around the time blogging was kind of, certainly it had been around for a while, but it was really increasing in popularity. And so I just one day decided I'm going to create a blog and I'm going to talk about my experience as an undergraduate student. And I didn't really know what I was doing, but I started blogging, and the University of Alberta picked it up as their official, at the time, my major was history, so their history blog. So that was really cool, and it was great to connect with other students and really realize, I'm not going through this alone. Like, everyone feels this way. So that was really cool. And, back then I knew nothing about social media, SEO. I just literally hand drew posters and stapled them all over the University of Alberta building. And I had those little tearaway tabs with my URL. It was pretty interesting, but that's how I got started. And since then, I've really worked hard to learn more about blogging, and hope to share some good tips with you today about it. So what is an academic blog? If you Google, how to start a blog, you are going to get so much advice. There's just a lot of advice out there on how to start a blog, particularly profitable blogs, that's really being pushed right now in literally any niche. And I have attended probably over 100 different webinars, courses, read different articles, and they all say, you can apply these techniques to any kind of niche. And while that's true to some extent, I do think an academic blog is a bit different than, most blogs, because you're probably not going to have 2 million people automatically subscribe to your newsletter who are interested in your particular research niche, because it is a niche category. And so academic blogging is a little bit different, where you're really looking to target a specialized audience. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So an academic blog helps academics provide helpful advice primarily to your academic niche, but it's also written in a way that helps to articulate academic ideas to inform non-specialists. So, I may not be an ecology major, but if I were to read your blog post, I'm hoping that I would be able to understand it. And with so much sort of, I don't want to say fake news, but there's so much false information out there. I think it's so important that academics do contribute to this public sphere of information, and so that we do have some informed specialists who are providing this kind of content. And thirdly, it helps to build credibility for you as an academic, but also it does have the potential to be profitable as well. And while this is intentionally not the focus of this webinar, because I really don't want you to go into it thinking, okay, how am I going to make money? Let's first just work on building a blog and making sure that it's something you love. And then it's really easy at that point to turn it into something, maybe like it's a side business. So blogging tool so by the end of this webinar, I'm really hoping that you'll at least have a sense of whether you want to choose a paid or a free blogging platform. I'm hoping that you're able to define your target audience and write a purpose statement to guide your writing, to brainstorm domain names and content ideas for your academic niche, to apply basic copywriting principles to your content to make it clear and concise, to share your content via social media and other types of platforms, and to repurpose blog content into different kinds of media. And this is a little graphic I created to show it's not always a linear process. You may set up your blog initially, create content, share it, and then you may decide, oh, I want my blog to kind of be organized differently. I want to add different pages and maybe change my content a little bit, or my strategy for sharing the content. So this isn't always a linear process. Everything can change, and it might change, since mine certainly did. So getting started. So setting up your blog. So we're going to look at defining your target audience, writing a purpose statement, choosing a platform, and choosing a domain name. So defining your target audience. It's really important to start out by thinking, who is it that you are writing to? We always create these writing personas in web writing. They're also called an avatar. So it's literally a description of who it is, down to like naming the person, describing, what they do as a career, what their education background is, what do they do for fun. So really flesh out this person that you are writing to, and write to that person when you are creating this content. You can even create 2 or 3 different personas. This really helps to really define who it is you're writing for. So think about what problem it is that you want to solve with your current skills and knowledge. And so please know that you can absolutely start a blog even if you do not have a PhD in this topic. You likely have information that someone doesn't, someone who's just getting started. And this was my biggest tip for overcoming imposter syndrome, and just that fear of getting started by sharing academic knowledge online can be very intimidating. And so one thing I just had to learn was to write from my own experience. And I encourage you to do that as well. So this can be a post like, what I learned about this, what I learned about blank, what I learned from my first experience defending my thesis, or how I dealt with this problem, or how I approached this issue. No one can ever fault you from writing from your own point of view. And you can always invite that feedback in your post. How did you deal with this? Let me know in the comments. So this is, I think, the most helpful tip I can give you for just getting over that fear of, oh, I'm not an expert. I don't think I can share this content. Someone will call me out. No, they won't. And to be honest, I think I'd rather read content from somebody who was just where I was a year ago, rather than a complete expert. Do I want to read a professional essayist tips on how to write an essay? That might be great. But what I really want to know is, I'm stuck with this thing. I'm not getting good grades on my essays, but someone who just wrote about how I went from B's to A's, that's going to be really helpful to me to know, well, this person was just dealing with this issue, and here's how they overcame it. So writing a purpose statement. This can be something, I encourage you to actually write this down. A purpose statement helps you really define the purpose of your blog and focus your writing. Keep in mind, it's totally fluid. You can change it over time. Like I mentioned, I think mine changed like 5 or 6 times. And you can literally just write it on a Post-it note, put it by your computer. It just helps to keep referring back to that. And there's a helpful template here. So if you follow this template, the purpose of this blog is to help who accomplish what, so that they can take this action or next step. So as an example, I wrote my purpose statement that's on my blog right now. And it says, the purpose of this blog is to share instructional, informational, and inspirational content to help education administration researchers, that's my who, build a research toolkit. And so I always refer to this purpose statement when I'm creating content, and I ask myself, does this post help someone to do something? Does it provide them with useful information? Or does it inspire them in some way to do this kind of research? So blogging platforms, there are a number of blogging platforms. There's more than I know out there now. There's always a new one. But here are 3 of kind of the most common ones that I know about. WordPress is certainly the most common platform. I think on their website, they state that they power 38% of the internet. That is huge. WordPress is great. And I need to, have it on here as an example. I personally don't use WordPress, but I did use a free WordPress site when I was starting out with my first blog. And that's a great way to go if you just want to start with a free platform just to see if you even like it. And you don't want to spend the money right away. WordPress.com, I believe, is the free site, and then WordPress.org is where you can purchase like the paid site, and then you would also look for a host. So they have a list of recommended hosts on their site. Like Bluehost is really popular, and DreamHost I think is another one. So they have a ton of options, and WordPress really, you can make it look however you want. You can add as many plugins as you want, really customize your website. But there is a bit of a tech learning curve. So if that's not your thing, I recommend one of the other two. So I personally use Squarespace. It is a paid site. I don't think they have a free platform, but it is really easy to use. They have templates. It's drag and drop. That works for me because I don't really care about the tech side of things. I like their templates, and it just allows me to just write. And that's really what I want to do. Wix is another website, I think similar to Squarespace, where they do have like the drop and drag features. And it's, again, another all-in-one platform.
Yeah.
So those are some recommendations. Yeah.
Yeah, Wix does have a free version. So
they do.
They do have a fully functional free version. So Wix and WordPress, I believe they also have a paid version, but the free version is essentially fully functional. So you can do most of the things you would want to do in a blog, especially if you're starting out.
That's awesome. Good to know. Yeah, so another free option, which is fantastic. There's, you can, of course, blog on platforms like Medium is quite popular, or even writing posts for LinkedIn. I like to think of those as like, maybe you want your own website to have your personal brand, but if you also want to write content for those sometimes, that's great. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, I'm talking about really in this webinar, creating your own website. So these are some of the most common platforms. I think Blogger, Tumblr, again, are other kinds of platforms out there. So choosing a domain name, don't overthink it. I think we spend way too long on the name. I think what's more important to think about is whether you want, what kind of brand, I guess, to use that word, like what do you want to build? So is it your personal name? Do you want it to be associated with you as a person? Or is it sort of a group or a sort of brand? In my case, I chose Valentine Academia because it was a combination of my name and something descriptive about the blog. It's an academic blog, but adding your name does make it a little bit easier as well to register a .com. So I would say, try to think of a name, and when possible, register .com, because they are just way more memorable and, much more so than a .net. Although, if you wanted ecology research, I think that might be taken at this point, but that might be really hard to get as a .com. So, but try when possible if it was your name mixed with something else that makes it a bit more unique. But yeah, don't spend too long on it. Registering your name across social media platforms is a good idea, even if you are not planning on using all those platforms. And I do not recommend you use all the platforms. There are some websites, if you type into Google, like social media checker, there is a way to just look up. There's quite a few tools where you can just like type in your domain name and it will show you which usernames, across the platforms are available with that same name. That can be helpful too, and may even inform what you want your blog name to be, because ecology research, for example, may be taken across all those social media platforms. So then you may want to come up with a different name where you can get the Twitter and the Instagram, etc. So yeah, just keep it simple and memorable. So moving on to creating content. So we're going to talk a little bit about brainstorming ideas. We're going to talk about creating infinite content. It is possible. In one slide, I'll give you thousands and thousands of blog post ideas. Content writing tips. a basic and effective blog post template that I follow. And we're going to talk a little bit about posting frequency. So brainstorming ideas. So in terms of brainstorming, lists, mind maps are great. You've probably done this in your research as well. Spreadsheets are very helpful. I personally use a Google Sheet to build my editorial calendar, which I'll talk a little bit about in a moment. But I just type in my ideas in the spreadsheet, and that's really helpful. So I can just kind of like copy and paste them when I want to add them to my editorial calendar. But also just having a small notebook or something where you can just jot ideas down, or using the Notes app on your phone. Those work really well, just so that wherever you are, if you have an idea, you can write it down. And sometimes those ideas just come to you out of nowhere. It's important, I think, at this point too, to revisit your purpose statement and decide what kinds of content will be helpful for your audience. So just always going back to your why, and of course, your target audience. And you can also start to think about what kinds of categories you want to include in your blog. With your academic blog, you may have fewer categories, but I kind of divide mine up again into those three, which is instructional content, so how-to kinds of content, informational content, information I think is really important, and then of course inspirational content, where I think of something that I think is really inspiring that I want to share. And of course that it can include like highlighting your own research accomplishments or other people's research. So one good question to ask yourself is, if I was just starting out in this field, what would I want to know? This will help you create lots of content for people that may just be getting into your field. It may also be really helpful for thinking of what your first blog post could be. So what is that fundamental thing that you would tell somebody who came to you and asked, I'm really interested in this kind of research. What's something you want me to know? That can be really helpful for coming up with that very first blog post. So here's a lot of different kinds of blog content you can create. So through combining these, you can basically create thousands and thousands of blog posts. There's no end in sight for my blog in terms of coming up with blog ideas, and that's because these are the kinds of posts out there. There may be others. And I'm not going to maybe read this entire list, but I think maybe by just scanning this list, I'm hoping you can already start to think of some ideas for your own blog, some of the kinds of content you could create. So what kind of how-to posts could you write? What kind of case study could you write? Is there an expert in your field you could interview? Are there other students you could interview? Is there something from your own life you could speak to? Maybe there's frequently asked questions. So if you've been blogging for a little while, maybe there's some questions you're getting and you could answer those in a frequently asked questions post. Opinion articles are great. Discussion posts are great. Inviting that discussion into your blog. Profiles and interviews. One kind of post I love to write are paper summaries. I find those extremely helpful, and it's even like one of the links on my blog. And so that when someone Googles that paper, the paper comes up and then I'm right after it. So it really helps you rank higher in Google, especially using, and we'll talk about keywords, but commonly using the same research keywords in all of your types of content will eventually rank you higher and higher, so that when people are looking at that kind of research, you will be a go-to resource for them. So some content writing tips. So academic writing and web writing are very, very different, which was interesting. It was interesting to go from completing my master's right into a web writing course where the goal is to get your point across as concisely as possible. And we don't always do that in academic writing, right? We write in verbiage that is understood at a higher level, and we use a lot of words that a lot of people may not really understand. The goal of academic writing is very different than web writing. Web writing, again, going back to the purpose of an academic blog, it's not only to help people in your niche, but also to appeal to a general audience as well. So I should be able to understand your content, even if I'm not a scientist, for example, because I'm interested in a lot of different things, and that could be interesting to a lot of people as well. It's really important in your blog post to write to write in this you-focused writing way. So you are speaking directly to your audience. So you are literally writing to somebody. Have you ever felt this way? You literally are speaking to them, which can again be very different than academic writing, where we kind of speak, generally, objectively. We need to speak directly to the person reading this post. And that is really going to be key to engaging them into your content and hooking them right in the beginning of the post. You want to keep your writing style conversational. This reflects your authentic voice, and it's going to set you apart from any other blog. There are millions of blogs out there, and your blog may possibly be among a few, in your particular niche, but your voice is what is going to separate you out from anyone else and make people really love your content because you're being really real with them. And that could just be saying, like, can I just get real with you for a second? I struggled with this. This was hard. It's okay to be, to show your personality in these blog posts. Make sure to include your why, always. Get to the point. Always ask yourself, so what? If you're rereading your post, ask yourself, okay, so what? Did I get to the point? Did I kind of just ramble and not really, allow my audience to go away with a clear learning of some kind, a clear outcome, or like a call to action? Just keep that in mind, because sometimes we can get off topic with our writing. And think always about what this post will end up doing for your target audience. So here is an effective template, and I'll talk about short and long form content in just a moment, but I wanted to just look at this template for a minute. This is a really easy way to break up a blog post. It seems kind of like there's an intro, a middle, and an end. That's not to say you need like 3 paragraphs only in your blog post, but the middle part can be quite long. But your introduction, you can start with either just a quick summary of what you're talking about. It's kind of the journalistic approach to blogging, just summarizing everything in one summary. It's called a nut graph, kind of like in a nutshell. Or you can start out with an anecdote. And I love that approach slightly more, although the first approach can also be really helpful, especially for those kind of news related posts. But starting out with like a little story or something to introduce somebody into this blog post is always, I think, a little bit more interesting. For example, I'm writing a post right now about how I almost didn't get into my grad program. And so I'm starting out by saying, like, I almost didn't get in. And here's why my letter of intent was so important to sway the committee to accept me. So that's your hook. That's gonna, you want them to just read the next paragraph, and the point of that paragraph is to get them to read the next paragraph, and so on. So you want to really identify what it is you're going to solve for them. So the key need or the problem. Then the middle part of your blog post is going to provide all your details and your main content. And it's very important when you get to this part that you do break up your text, write in very short paragraphs, like 2 to 3 sentences, maximum 5 sentences. 1 sentence can be a paragraph in blogging. That is fine. You want to have as many images as you feel is needed, but at least 1. And for sure, break up your content into headers. So if you've come up with 3 ways to do something, include 3 subheadings. And then, for every one of those headings, you may consider using a different photo as well. And then your end is really making your final point and having a call to action. That is important. That can be a soft call to action, like, leave a comment below or like this post. It can also be something like, if you're interested in this, check out my ebook on this topic. This could be like a good introduction to something, but I've written an ebook that will take you through every step, a complete beginner's guide to this topic. Or, it could be to purchase a course, or it can be to download a free ebook, or like a digital library some people are doing, I've seen, which is pretty cool, like where you get to put in your email and then they'll give you access immediately to a whole digital library. And that's, of course, to help build a subscriber list. but we're just getting started, so we're not going to worry about that too much. A lot of my calls to action sometimes are just simply, especially for informational posts, just like, please comment. And with short and long form posts, so I'd say the shortest blog post you might want to write would be like 700 to 800 words. I think Google will tend to rank you higher if you have longer form blog posts, like 15 to 2,500 words is actually a great length for a blog post because it includes a lot of keywords, and you've actually proven that you're actually providing a lot of information on this topic, and it's not just like clickbait, where I'm sure we've all been there where we've clicked an article, we're expecting some kind of helpful tips or something, and it's just blah and nothing, and didn't really teach you anything, and it was like 200 words and just wasn't worth the click. So really, I think put the effort into writing something helpful for your audience, and take the time to make that blog post really well thought out. Yes, and speaking of using images and other kinds of media, just a reminder, it's very important to always make sure you have either permission to use your images, and that could be like written permission. In one case, I was writing, I did like an exemplar post about a piece of architecture, and it related to my topic, but I won't get into that. And I emailed the architect to be able to use the images of their building. But it's also helpful if you want to use a bunch of different images online to search through Creative Commons. You can also set your Google search settings so that it will only search images that are licensed for reuse. So you just want to make sure you're doing that. We can't just like Google and use images anymore. We need to make sure we're filtering by the ones we're actually able and licensed to use.
Yeah, and I think that is a great point to make, because even, and especially when you're doing a scientific academic blog, I think it's really important, because you're going to be citing articles, especially when you're trying to write a blog post on the specific topic that you're researching. I think it's really important. I mean, of course, get the citations right. And when you use images, be very careful. I would really caution to see if their graphs, if their data is really licensed for reuse. Because, I mean, a lot of them now are, because the publisher will have that access, and only if they're open access, I think you will be allowed to take that data and share it. Because if you have a subscription, also make sure, if you have any doubts, contact the author, because they will know what it's licensed for and if they give you permission to cite that. But of course, you need to be very careful. Of course, it depends on the blog you're doing. Like you said, if you're doing a how-to or something that does not require that, but for on the scientific side of things, if you're citing a research article, make sure you're allowed to cite that or show that data in your blog post, because that is really important.
Yeah, great point. And it also reminded me too, if you wanted to create your own images, I would say when possible, try and take your own pictures. So if it's, this review of a great book I read, a great image you could take is, a picture of the book that you have taken, and that will always be a safe kind of photo to use. You can also create free graphics on canva.com. They're great. So for example, if you're writing about something, it's kind of hard to think, well, what kind of visual could I have for this? For example, a paper summary. I don't want my visual every time to be a picture of me reading a paper or a screenshot of an academic article, because that's a little boring. So I create a graphic through Canva, and it's just like kind of a Twitter-sized graphic, so that it's easy for me to just repost on Twitter, of a quote that I loved from the article. And so that's a great way as well to just kind of create an image that isn't like a picture of something, but it's got that, it does break up your content a bit. So it's not just like a big block of text, which is exhausting to read. If I come across a website and it's just a giant chunk of text, I don't know about you, but I just feel so uninterested in reading that, or at least it does challenge me. I'd have to be very interested to read a 20-sentence block of text. So frequency of posting. So I would say determine what's reasonable for you. If you want to post every single day, I warn you, that is really hard. I think your content would end up being extremely short. I choose to publish a post. I try for every week. That can be also challenging, But I would say whatever works for you, do that. If it's once a month, that is fine. Just whatever you do, choose, just commit to it, do it consistently so that if you do develop those readers who come to your blog often to check to see what you've written next, that you have, that they can rely on, every Monday you've got your new post, or every, the first of every month you have a new post that they can read. I would develop some kind of low maintenance editorial calendar. And this could just at first be a list of ideas that you have, but at some point it does help to have, I recommend using Google Sheets because of course you can access it anywhere. It's really easy to change around. But to have the date, the title of your blog post, I like to have like check boxes, whether it was published or not, and the keywords I used. And yeah, I find that really helpful for just staying on track and to check in with myself to say, okay, am I really behind, or what am I doing next? So I can start thinking about that. Scheduling posts is also something I think every platform will allow you to pre-schedule a post so that it will publish it at a future date. So if you do finish it early, I wish I could say that's what I always do, but I'm usually writing up until the last minute. But in those cases, if you finished the post Sunday night and you wanted it to be posted Monday morning, you could just simply schedule it and your system will do that for you. But I also think it's important to take breaks. I realized this year when I was coming up with my editorial calendar and I looked at 365 days of, what that content looks like, and it looked exhausting. I just thought I can't do this. And so I decided I was going to take summers off between June and August, and also the winter break as well, the whole month of December, so that I could relax, read a book or something, let's do something else, but also to just refresh my memory, to read things, to get more inspiration and to come up with more ideas, because I think over time you need to replenish your ideas and just reflect on how things went. And again, just have that time to yourself. It's so important. And I also think it's worthwhile to develop, again, just a quick and dirty social media strategy. This can just be, I think there's a bunch of printables online, even like free things you can print off, but even just in like a Word doc or something, just to create just a quick overview of your social media and how you want to, how often you want to post, just to have an idea. That can be really helpful too. And you can build that right into your editorial calendar. Okay, and last but not least, sharing your content. So it's a good segue talking about social media. It tends to be the first thing we think of when we think of sharing our content. So we're going to learn a little bit about using keywords and phrases, sharing content on social media, and repurposing your blog content into other forms. So with keywords and phrases, it's important to, and again, you don't need to do this right away. I would wait until you had a few blog posts, but you can start to categorize and tag all your posts with keywords. That's going to help you, again, show up on Google and other search engines when people search for particular terms. I would always use your discipline. So if that's ecology, for example, I would use that. I use educational administration. That's always a keyword in any one of my blog posts. Again, the categories will, I think, evolve naturally for you. You may even choose to use those categories I mentioned, kind of like instructional content, inspirational kinds of content, and then informational kinds of content. But again, whatever works for you. I think blogging in academia is particularly great in that we're already niched down until it hurts, right? We have very specific niches. And that is the main challenge of a lot of bloggers. They go, I want to start a blog and I love DIY and I love cooking and I love, knitting and I love not gendered norm things, but I love all these things. And they don't necessarily know what they want to write about. But as an academic, you probably already have a very specific interest, and that is awesome. So, picking out those keywords is going to be very, very useful. Keywords and phrases will, again, yes, help the search engine find you. And it's important to use them everywhere, not just in your title, but the first few paragraphs of your post. And if you have a subheading, I would use them there as well. And I always track my keywords and phrases in my editorial calendar. So that spreadsheet just has a column that says, what keywords and phrases did I use? And when I was first starting out, I just typed whatever I wanted in, but then over time I saw that I was using I saw a pattern of the kinds of keywords and phrases I was using. And now I'm more intentional with the words I'm using, because I've realized, okay, these are obviously have developed organically as very common themes for me. So sharing content on social media. So it's important to think about where your target audience is spending a lot of their time. I think Twitter seems to be very popular for academics, which is why I really like Twitter. I think like Instagram can also be great. Some even have like a Facebook groups. I've seen researchers have like a Facebook group that's like a type of research group, so that anyone who is interested in that type of research joins the group, and then you're promoting your blog content within that group, as well as like chatting with people. So that can be one way to share your content. I would just recommend whatever you choose. And I think there's like more social media platforms than I'm aware of these days. But whatever you do choose to use, I would just pick one or two, like two might even be a lot, just maybe one at first, that you want to just get really good at. And that could be Twitter, that could be LinkedIn. It's just important that whatever you do them well. Because I think there is an urge a little bit to like, although we do want to register our name on all the social media platforms so no one else can use it, you don't necessarily want to use them all. Because I think what happens is you end up just like posting on some of them very, irregularly. And then you just, it's your engagement.
And when you mentioned Facebook, I just wanted to touch on, so you said Facebook groups. A lot of blogs that I know have their own Facebook page. So, like how we have for the student section, we have our own Facebook page. And then we have a group that is registered under our page. So of course I think having a page would be really helpful if you were going to choose Facebook. But Twitter, as you mentioned, is really popular for academics. And I've seen so many platforms that like have their like podcasts, but blogs can be used for multi-purpose. And I've seen podcasts that have been started, or engaging platforms that just they have their associated Twitter account, and and sometimes Twitter people who start out on Twitter end up having their own blog. So there's a lot of overlap there. So if you were trying to have Facebook, I would highly recommend creating a page, because a group is not you, it is a bunch of people. So if you have a page that's you, it's your brand, and then you can start a group within that page that is linked to that page.
Yeah, I love that suggestion. Thank you. So some tips for writing on social media. Again, it's important to be authentic and personable. Social media is all about being social. It's connecting with other people. And so it's really important to, although you may post your content sometimes, kind of like pull the curtain back a little bit and say, here's who I am. I'm, struggling today with this, or I'm just hanging out today. I've decided not to write anything, and who else is just relaxing on a Sunday? Like, it's just, I think it's a place more so where you can just really be yourself. To an extent, of course, you don't want to maybe overshare. Write short, concise sentences and include calls to action. Still incredibly important for social media content, especially when your goal is for your social media post to drive more content to your blog. You want that call to action. So click here to read the post, or better yet, click here for your free guide, or freebie download included, like something that is in it for someone else. It's always a great way to get someone to your content. But again, not to be clickbaity, but to actually provide something that is useful, and that can as a freebie content that you could offer if someone wants to come read your post. That can just be something as simple as like a checklist, or a quick like cheat sheet, or even just a summary of the post. And again, using hashtags, very important for social media. Images are incredibly important. I notice content so much more when there is an image, and I think most people probably do. And other kinds of visual content that can include like infographics, for example. There's other ways to share your content though. And I think the thing about social media we have to remember is that we don't own our audiences on social media. If Twitter shut down tomorrow, That would be bad. But you would lose those followers, or if Instagram just closed down, you would lose those followers. And it's happened where a blogger relies on Instagram, for example, as their main platform, and then their Instagram gets canceled or shut down, and suddenly thousands of people are, they've lost those contacts. So although I struggle with newsletters because it seems like a lot of upkeep. I think it is important, and I'm more and more convinced that building a newsletter these days is just vitally important, because those are people who have said, yes, I'm giving you access to my inbox. This is like the biggest trust you can give someone online. And even if you just want to collect those names at first, it's great to just build your own list of contacts. And also education and professional networks through maybe your grad association. I think there's a lot of different ways you can share content, through maybe listservs or emails. I don't think it always needs to be social media. And although that is a very powerful tool, I think there are other ways that we should also explore, and that could be in person as well. So if we're at a research day or giving a poster presentation, have like a small card even with your blog on it. That's what I do. And it's great. I've had a lot of people follow up that way. And repurposing blog content. So, we can spend a lot of time writing blog posts, but that shouldn't just be it, because there's a lot of different ways that people consume content. And so I think it's helpful to then repurpose that content into different kinds of, not only content for your blog, like podcasts and videos, a social media series, for example, online talks and workshops, but also for academic purposes. A blog post can be a great outline for an article, for example, or a conference presentation, a chapter, or maybe even a book. Maybe it sparks your interest in something that you want to keep writing about. And I think that's fantastic. An ebook, a webinar, an online course of some kind. I think that there's just unlimited things you can do with, once you've written a blog post, what can you do with it? There's just so many more things than just kind of like posting it once and leaving it on your blog forever. I think people have said, there's I think a large group of people are saying writing is dead. You need to only make videos now and other kinds of content. I disagree, but writing is so important. But I do think it can be a great place to maybe repurpose into other kinds of things like video, because I know when a blogger creates a video post that kind of just summarizes what their blog post has talked about, that's easier for me to listen to kind of in the background as I'm getting ready, rather than having to sit down and actually read the blog post.
And yeah, that's one thing. And I really liked, I've seen people using Spotify to start up like a podcast, and then blogging. And I was like, oh, wow, there's just so much that people are just now coming up with, like whatever, social media platform or whatever platform they found. YouTube is another thing where a lot of, there's people who do video blogging, and then, they have their own blogs, and then they do summaries. There's so much you can do. I mean, you don't have to limit yourself to blog and then not repurpose. So this is a really good point to make, that you can, develop that into something else.
Yeah, and I should mention too, maybe you don't want to start off by writing. I think at some point it's helpful to have something written. But even if you're more of if you speak better than you write, it may be helpful to even record the blog post first, and then you can just type it out after. I think there's a lot of ways you can create like multiple different kinds of content, which is cool. And really creating a video could be as simple as just scrolling through the post and talking about it. Like, it can be really, really simple just to get started. And I wanted to just end this part of the webinar by talking about, why I think academic blogging is so important. I think publicly engaged work is not always recognized as legitimate academic writing. And that's why a lot of us don't do it. We're busy with things that are recognized. But I would challenge you to think about, are you just doing things that are officially recognized? I think it's important to contribute to the public sphere of academic journalism, and to put content online that is researched, informed, and that does help people, because a lot of journals are, put behind a paywall. We know this. We just finished Open Access Week. That was a big eye opener for how much really is available online for, that is consumable content versus everything that's kind of locked behind paywalls. And this is really, really important. Blogging, it's teaching, learning, and service to your field, right? It's research, it's all these things. And, it is really ultimately a big service to your field, which of course isn't recognized as much as it should be. And I would also encourage you, if you do write an academic blog, to include a link to that in your CV. One book I had read it was called Going Public, I believe, talked about including a blog, your blog in like a public writing section of your CV. So if you're writing articles for other websites or news sites or anything like that, to include that. And also in sites like LinkedIn, for example, just to share your content as a legitimate academic contribution.
Yeah, so that was really great. So that was a lot of information, and I just wanted to add a little bit more for the science side of things, and also the way that you can also have a personal blog. So I really love that idea when you told me you can talk about how I got through grad school applications, and it gave me ideas for my own blog. So it was like I'm trying to start one right now. So as a scientist, I think I've seen a lot of great websites, personalized websites and a blog done by a lot of great people, and what they do is really it's you're showing you on a website. And I've seen you as a scientist, you also want to make sure you add your publications if you have them. So these are also important components if you're trying to, if this is a website, if this is a blog that you're going to attach to your CV, and this comes highly recommended, especially when you're applying to grad schools. And I have heard that. So currently I have my LinkedIn profile because I do not have a blog yet or a website that's set up for me yet. However, it is highly recommended that if you can, and Christine just showed you how to set up a website, how to create your domain name. If you can get that, and if you can do that, it will really, really help whoever is recruiting you, whoever's looking at your content, not just for sharing this work, but also to project yourself as a professional and an individual. Again, you're not expected to be a specialist here. Without a PhD, like you said, you're not expected to. This is your experience and what you've learned from it. And, I think it will really help. And I think for me, it might really help when I hopefully I don't have to write another personal statement. I hope to get my PhD applications done for this cycle. So, I think it would really help if you have your publications on there. And like you said, not just linking your website to your CV, but also putting some form of your CV on your website as well. I think that will, introduce yourself. And the purpose statement idea, I love it. Whatever they're coming to take away from your website, blog, just put it on there, and also introduce yourself in short 4 sentences. Okay, hi, I'm a student here. I do research with so and so and so, because when you mention your particular research interest, they'll know that the content in your blog is going to come from that, part of the field. And I think that will really help. And I've seen so many people use social media to add their field pictures or something. Put that on your blog. I think that is going to really help show your audience that, okay, this is what I do. And also, people who do that already have a bigger advantage because they have their own pictures. They don't have to go and find new pictures when you write about it. So I think it's going to be really helpful. And I personally, I love career development, and I love to, share resources that I find. And I've been using Twitter for that for the past few months. So I'm probably going to put all of that in my blog. It's just to have a place where I can show okay, these webinars have been done, these informations have been given out, and these papers have been written. Excuse me. So, there's a lot of things you can do with your website. So as a scientist, I would highly, highly, highly recommend you have one. And especially, it serves a lot of different purposes. It does not serve one singular purpose. So I think we can move on to Q&A. So before we start the Q&A, let me just reiterate what I said in the beginning, is that if you do not want your video, your face, or your name to be on this recording, then please put your question in the chat box. However, if you're fine, then you can go ahead and unmute yourself and then ask us if you have any questions. Are there any questions? So let's open it up. Okay, so we have a question on SEO. So SEOs is, okay. Surprising. It's search engine operation.
Search engine optimization.
Optimization. Sorry. Yeah, I forgot. I know what SEOs are, but like it's been so long since I heard that abbreviation. So, well, Christine, do you want to take it? And then I'll maybe try to simplify it.
Yeah, so is the question just what SEO is and how to use it on your blog? Yeah, so that's really the point of using keywords and phrases, and really including those keywords in your blog post titles, but also within like the first few paragraphs of your blog, and any sort of headings or anything. That will be really important. It's important for Google to be able to pick up on those keywords.
And I'll add in a little bit on that on how we mentioned when they're sharing in social media. So if you want your website, your blog to rank higher in Google search results, you definitely want to, share your work, links on your social media, because Twitter really ranks really high up when you Google a certain name, and especially if you have a blog name, it's going to show up. Your Twitter account probably will show up, but you want your blog site to show up at least in the first 10. So that's what this helps. The keywords will really help. So let's say for me, I research viruses. So if I say virus and then I say virus microbiota interactions, those are general keywords I would use when I'm talking about my field. So another thing would be like career development or, grad school application. So all of these come under a general idea of, keywords that you would use, which would, if someone types in grad school applications and they type in, career development resources for grad school applications, then your blog post will rank higher and get more visibility. So that is really what SEOs do, is essentially you're using techniques to get your visibility rank up when search engines look for posts similar. And one more thing is that having a Google Scholar account will really help when you're trying to link your articles that you have published already. Have a Google Scholar account associated with your name, verify it by your institutional email, and then add your citations to your profile. And I think I can show you how I have mine set up, and that will pick up on all of the blog posts you write, anything that's published in the internet. I think more importantly, what it'll pick up on is your conference abstracts. Anything that you're done through a larger medium, it'll pick up. So when you have that associated, and you can put keywords in there too that describe you as an individual. So having a Google Scholar account associated with you, and then using those phrases in your blog as well, would give you that, okay, she's legit. They can also often link your Google Scholar account, have an org ID, and this is common practice. It's becoming common practice now as an academic, scientific writer for journals. You are always now, they're pushing you towards get an org ID. It's free, so why not verify yourself that way? So I put all of those identifiers that you have as a scientist, so that way you can make sure that your visibility ranks higher, and they can also verify you as to the work that you've been doing. So I have a couple more questions. So the next question is additional tips on building a larger following. Again, for this, I would highly recommend Twitter. So if you were not here for our last webinar, we talked about how you can increase and network. And I think if you're starting out with an academic blog, I think the branding is the first thing that's going to be super important going along forward, because when you start building a network, so the first important step is create your brand. And then when you start, gathering followers, you want to make sure that's your fixed name. So, keep it simple, but like she said, keep it memorable. And then what you can do is you can start posting. And then the usage of hashtags is going to be super important. I mentioned that I like to tag people for the ESA student section, but we already have, a big following that we are reaching, and of course it's growing, but having the hashtag. So let's say ecology research or field research, field ecology, marine ecology, use those hashtags that are specific. And also if you're writing tips or academic tips, make sure you use that as a hashtag for the post that you're sharing. And of course, have an introduction post on, what your blog's about, like the purpose statement, have that on your Twitter account as well, have that as like the pinned tweet. So we were talking about all of this before, so I would definitely, let me see if I can try to link that in the comments, so that way you can go and check the YouTube video, because it is posted. Am I breaking up somehow?
I think that's really cool. A little bit. I thought maybe it was my computer, but
probably not. It's because it's raining here. All right, so I have another question. Can we use phrases in our blog? So I'm not sure what you mean by that, but I'm assuming in the content, but yeah, sure.
Do you want me to
Yeah.
yeah, so phrases in our blog, so absolutely. What I would do when you're thinking of key phrases is I would imagine what someone is going to type into Google when they're searching for what you want, you want to provide the answer for example. So you're going to provide tips for getting into an ecology program or ecology graduate program. They're going to type into Google, ecology programs or tips for applying to grad school. So I would use those kinds of keywords and phrases in your post. So whatever it is you think someone's going to search for, and there are ways of like you can, it's like you can type into Google the keyword to see what appears, and then it will give you those recommended phrases, right?
Yeah,
So
and
that's really important.
yeah, and I think even more important when you're targeting a specific scientific niche for your specific. So let's say you're a molecular biologist. So I study immune responses. So this is my example. So I study interferon lambda signaling. So that is, so how does interferon lambda signaling work with virus microbiota interaction? So there are very, there are phrases you can use that are specific, very specific to your field. And I think that is something you will definitely want to consider, especially when you're writing a scientific. When you're writing as a scientist, I think that is really important to have. There's a lot of like, you don't have to pick the same phrases. You're probably going to have the same trend of keywords along the way, but I think having phrases is really important just because, Google picks up on that too. So that's another thing you want to do for your SEO.
And Adisha, I actually just had a couple thoughts about the previous question, actually, about getting content and building your audience. So if you think about it, you probably are in contact already with a lot of your ideal target audience. So what I'd recommend is sharing your blog with them. So that could be like your graduate student association, for example. That could be at your research day for your school, like sharing your blog link to say, I talk about this kind of research on my blog, let's keep this conversation going. Really get it in front of people. I tried to do that when I started a blog by as I mentioned, creating those posters and stapling them up everywhere. Maybe not the most effective method looking back, but literally it was in the building where all the other students in my field were, hanging out. So that made sense. And I got a lot of my target audience that way. But if that's attending, say, a professional association or a conference or anything where you're really mingling with people in your field, have something ready that you can give them that just has your blog on it.
And I think for Zoom, now since a lot of scientific conferences are virtual, I have this 2-sentence or 3-sentence intro of myself and a link to my LinkedIn profile, because that's what I have right now. And that's what I've been using for a long time to, share content and all that stuff. So I think having that, something that you can copy paste into a chat box somewhere, because you're going to meet them on Zoom, especially now since we're all on lockdown. And I think having that would really help. And again, when you said in organizations, I love that idea. Your school will have your club, chapters, something that is very specific to your academic niche. And I think you can reach out to them. Most student clubs and student organizations are really happy to, promote their members' work. So, and especially if you're having a blog that is focusing on, giving information out to students, they will not have any problems putting that out on their listserv or their social media platform. So you can definitely do that. And of course, if you're mentioning a bigger organization or something, you're talking about a bigger organization, a group of people, definitely mention that again in your tweets or the way you use them, just so that those people know that, okay, there's a post done on my work. And I think that's where with scientific articles that you might be looking at, okay, these are articles that I used to get to this thought process for my own project. And I think citing those articles will really let them know. And also, if you can find the people that authored those articles, mention them also, so that way they'll be like, oh, this person has written something about me. So I think that really is what will help you build your network. And since you're really focused on a very niche environment, I would say, because if you mention their names, then they would share that with their peers, and then it will start up a conversation. That's really the way to go, especially when you're targeting such a small audience. I hope that explains your question. And I think I talked about LinkedIn a little bit. So our next webinar on the how-to series is going to be, talking about LinkedIn and how to start and maintain a professional LinkedIn profile. And I'll be talking about that on November 12th at 5 p.m. We also have another upcoming webinar that is going to be the week before the next how-to webinar is going to be on our student life during the pandemic webinar series. It's going to be on mental health, such an important topic that I have been really working on getting scheduled because we need to have that conversation on a much larger scale. That is going to be on November 6th at 7 p.m. ET. And of course, if you are following us on social media, I'm sure you are, that's how you found us. So please keep a lookout for those links as well. And also add, whenever you sign up for one of our webinars, make sure you add it to our calendar. I'm trying to figure out an easier way that it directly goes to your calendar when you sign up, but it's a work in progress. But thank you so much for everybody that came to our webinar today. This will be posted on our YouTube channel, ESA student section. So please go and check that out. I am going to try to see if I can put our academic Twitter, the recordings up on here. Let me see how that works. But yeah, Christine, do you have any final thoughts before we...
Oh, I was just typing into the chat that, if you do write a blog post, I would love to see it. So please just tag me. If you're on Twitter, the Academia Co is my Twitter. Yep. You can also search Valentine Academia will also come up, or my name. Or feel free to send me an email.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we were also talking about maybe a workshop in the future about, where you can live ask questions about, and Christine has been really she's wanting to do that. So we are going to have that in the future. Of course, we're still in the process of scheduling that, but we are definitely going to have that done. So I'm really thankful for Christine for, wanting to do that with us. So please keep a lookout for all of these new and exciting things that we will be putting out as part of the ESA student section. Also check out ESA and all the other work that we do as well. So the link I just put in the chat box is for our YouTube channel, and though they will have, the most recent videos will be from our academic Twitter webinar, which I highly recommend you check out. Again, it was Christine speaking that day, and it's really will give you a better idea as to the questions we heard about sharing your content. Really watch that through, so you will understand how you would, go ahead and, share your content, different types of content, and you can definitely have different types of content. So thank you so much for everybody that joined us today, and I hope to see you guys next time.
Thank you.